This is Weekly Woman by Jubilance for PMS. Welcome, Megan. We are so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, first of all, where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, I'm calling in from Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. Oh, yes, because we were trying to schedule and we were like, what is the proper time now that there's daylight savings time and Arizona doesn't practice it?
Exactly. I wanted to make sure I showed up on time, whatever time.
Amazing. No, what is your favorite part about Phoenix?
My favorite part about Phoenix has got to be the people here, first and foremost. I've ended up establishing just a community that feels like family. And a lot of that has been through my activity in CrossFit, which has just been the most amazing experience for me. I started CrossFit after I moved to Phoenix, a few years after that. And then also, I mean, right now it's just the most beautiful day. I know some of you are still covered in snow. It started a little cool this morning and it's going to be warm and then cool again tonight. It's just spectacular. Great places to hike, great people.
Wow, what a wonderful place to live. I'm in New York City and this morning it was snowing. It needs to stop.
And you could visit.
Yeah,
It's really around.
I know Phoenix sounds so idyllic right now. How lovely. And when did you move to Phoenix?
Moved in 2015 after I finished my PhD in genetics. I had a job opportunity at Arizona State University. I've since left academia, but stayed here with my daughter and our cute little house, and now we also have a dog.
Oh wow, that's amazing. And so you did a postdoc in genetics with in the area of environmental and genetic factors affecting body weight. Can you talk about what sparked your interest in that particular subject?
Yes, absolutely. Well, so first and foremost, genetics was the first thing I ever fell in love with. I was a kid, I was about 14 years old. I had just this wonderful education and opportunities to really study it in school. And I'm so grateful for that. For some reason, genetics just always intrigued me, captivated me.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I went to undergrad at University of Chicago, where I studied biology in general because I thought it was too soon to specialize. And I also studied Spanish literature. And I was a runner there for 3 years. I started bike racing while I was there, graduated undergrad, spent 2 years in Colorado just working and kind of catching my breath. Um, and then I had an opportunity to get a PhD in genetics and specifically in quantitative genetics in the laboratory of Trudy Mackay, who is renowned in quantitative genetics. And quantitative genetics, people joke, they're like, oh, that's better than qualitative genetics. And I'm like, ha ha ha. What it is the genetics of complex traits, traits that vary across a population, are highly polygenic, so affected by way more than one gene, and are also affected by the environment. And we can think of something like adult height as a trait like that. It's affected by
Oh,
hundreds of genes, but also if you experience childhood malnutrition, you are unlikely to grow to your maximum adult height that you're sort of genetically capable of. And there are other factors involved in adult height in the environment besides nutrition as a child. Um, so that's just one example of it. With the exception of genetic albinism, skin color. Babies that eat too many sweet potatoes, they end up looking kind of orange. Or if you put me out in the sun, I get very red and then I don't really tan. But there's an enormous amount of diversity across just natural skin color. Um, so I ended up studying the trait of total volume of food consumed using a mapping population of a laboratory model organism, just trying to understand what I like to refer to as the genetic architecture underlying that trait. And
oh,
humans, we're really hard to study because we don't have genetic tools available for like harder inquiries. We can't go in and be like, let's mutate this one gene and see what happens.
mhm.
Um, we can't, it's hard to map us genetically as well. And then also, if you think of, say, a family living together, they're sharing both a common environment, so environmental variants, and common genes, so genetic variants. And it's really hard to do what we call partition the variants in those situations. So laboratory model organisms come in there. And we know more about human genetics from fruit flies than we do from any other organism, including humans. So I used fruit flies to look at this. And
Wow.
went off on so many research adventures. A lot of this involves sorting virgin fruit flies very early in the morning, which sounds so silly. Uh,
Yeah.
but you just, you do it, you separate them, you measure how much they feed, you do the genetic mapping, you have a team of people around to help you with all different aspects of it. And at the end of the day, you shed light on some idea of what the genetic architecture looks like, understanding variation of feed and consumed. Across those 6 years of getting my PhD, all of my research, we found no correlation between total volume of food consumed and body mass.
Really?
This was animals that were on the exact same diet, the exact
Mhm.
same sort of food consumed. And I like to think of how, sometimes because I do CrossFit and I am very muscled, people are like, what do you eat to look the way you look? I say, I have so many caveats about asking those questions.
Hmm.
Um, and so much interest in encouraging people to find approaches to eating that support their health and that also keep in mind that like food is cultural, food is celebration, food is so much more than just trying to eat like a robot
Mhm.
for certain appearances too, and to emphasize performance and mood and how we're feeling. But an opportunity to do postdoctoral research, and now I'm finally getting to the answer of your question.
Oh, this is great. I love hearing all this.
Great. So an postdoctoral opportunity to still use fruit flies to look at the genetic and environmental factors affecting body weight became available. And I thought it was so interesting because even though there was no correlation between those traits with how we looked at them in fruit flies, that doesn't mean that they are not related. Um,
Hmm.
genetic variants and heritability are really complicated. Um, but the environmental factors that we were looking at in my postdoctoral position were levels of oxygen in the environment. Um,
Okay.
lower levels of oxygen suppress appetite. We know this in humans. If you ever go up
Oh,
to Vail, Colorado,
yeah. Mountain climbing.
there can be, so, the word anorexia, we always think of the eating disorder, which is actually
Mhm.
more properly anorexia nervosa. Lots of things can cause anorexia. Chemotherapeutic, it's just a loss of eating. Um,
Okay.
chemotherapy can cause anorexia, a loss of eating. Um, I experienced, for example, in my pregnancy with my daughter, a condition called hyperemesis gravidarum, which is severe excessive vomiting of pregnancy and nausea.
Oh,
And that caused, especially in the first trimester, a loss of eating. I lost 15 pounds my first trimester.
wow.
It's rough, but it wasn't like a thing that I was choosing or
Mm.
not necessarily choosing, but it wasn't anorexia nervosa.
Yeah.
Lower oxygen levels can cause a loss of appetite. Higher oxygen levels usually correlate with an increase in appetite, an increase in feeding, and an increase in body size. And
Wow.
you see this more prominently across the insect world. And this is all like, well, why should we care about insect research? Beyond just it's really interesting and cool. um, hypoxia signaling is also involved in cancer development. And
Uh-huh.
so these things that are really fundamental in basic research do have interesting implications for how we understand other aspects of even human health and disease. Um, and then additionally, something that I always consider when we're thinking about insect feeding too is it's worth understanding for its own merit. We lose approximately 1/3 of crop production to pests. So understanding how and why, particularly insects are feeding, and pests can also be fungal and
Mm-hmm.
other pests. Um, but it matters. It matters for global economies, and it matters for human health, and it matters because, man, the world is a really intensely beautiful place, and digging into that complexity it's hard and it's so much fun. It's just so.
Wow.
But then I started my postdoctoral position, and it became apparent to me that academia wasn't the right fit for me. For
Okay.
how I like to work and live and be happy in the world. Um, so
I'm glad.
thank you. Yeah, but yeah, that's my long answer from falling in love with genetics as a child to working.
Yeah. How did you first learn about genetics as a child? I feel like we did like those classes of like, why does someone have blue eyes or brown eyes? What is DNA? But what was that spark for you?
Science class at Kent Denver School. Yeah, I I was a kid. How do I phrase this? I don't know if we love things and so we push ourselves into them until we're good at them, or we're good at them and so it's easy for us to love them. I'm not sure where that loop is. But I was good at science and math.
Uh,
And I I pushed I've always been a really intense person too. When I was 7, I wrote, illustrated, and tried to publish a book. Um, thank
wow, that's amazing.
you. It's called The Detectives at the Museum. Um, and it was about dinosaur bones being stolen from a museum.
That sounds amazing.
There's so many plot holes. When I look at it now, I love it. It's kind of a comedy now, I think. Um,
Incredible.
but it's just like, I think also falling in love with genetics, also starting CrossFit, doing athletics, have been processes that have allowed me to more fully become myself,
Hmm.
um, and to become a better friend to myself. I think it can be really hard to be really different, to especially as a girl. Um,
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard to be a smart, creative, and just really different girl. But
Yeah.
genetics just let me go as far as I wanted to with it. And I had these teachers who encouraged it. Um, and I had this, I just had access to incredible education. My mother, sometimes I look back and wonder what it would have been like to be her as
Hmm.
a to me, because we're very different people. But then at the end of the day, she supported other things like my taking college creative writing classes when I was in middle school, my taking college engineering classes when I was in high school.
Wow.
She was like, get it, girl. Um,
That's
and
amazing.
so I know that in some areas, like her putting me in cotillion, I really disliked it very much. And that was like a part where we had a lot of friction
Oh,
against.
me too. Me too. I was like, get me out of this place.
Yep, I want to run as fast as
Mhm.
possible
I
from
refuse to wear this glove. Get this off of my hand.
gloves. And now my hands are like all calloused, and I'm like actually really proud of it. And
Yeah, that's how they should be.
right,
Mhm.
how you're like sinking your hands into life.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I recently started strength training with and or over the past 6 months. And so now I finally have those calluses where I hold them, which I'm
Oh,
so proud.
And anytime you want to chat about any aspect of it, like I am here for it. I think every woman needs to be strength training, whatever that means for her, and every woman can find a way to do it. There's
Yeah.
something that you can do, and it helps you feel like powerful and courageous.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't have the muscles that you have yet, Megan, but I will. I want those Michelle Obama arms.
Consistency over time. And, for me, the journey of being consistent has been one of telling myself that I'm worth it, that I'm
Hmm.
mad. And if I, you know, fall off track, it's so much better to just gently get back on track, uh,
Hmm.
and to train in ways that I can keep showing up. It's never about doing your most. And, some days you look at your training and it kind of scares you. But then I remind myself, fear and excitement are neurophysiologically identical.
Are they really?
Mhm. They stimulate
Wow.
the same neurons in the brain. And so maybe it's actually excitement that I'm feeling.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to turn every time I feel fear into excitement then, or at least just tell myself it is.
It is a really good trick. It is a really good trick. And then some days you're just feeling sort of stale and but you remind yourself to just show up. Just get out
Mm.
the door, just show up. So maybe the weights are going to be lighter. Maybe the barbell feels so heavy.
Mhm.
Just focus on high quality movements. Lighten that bar up. There's no council of elders that's going to excommunicate your journey toward health if you lighten your barbell up, or if you shorten your workout. If you
Mhm.
A 10-minute jog is better than 0 minutes.
Yeah. So Megan, you started by running in college. And how did you move to CrossFit? How did you discover it when you got to Phoenix?
Yeah, so when I was in graduate school, I was still racing bikes. I was what's called a Category 2 road and cyclocross racer, which
Wow.
was a lot of fun, and I had some big ambitions there. And I was early in my marriage. I'm divorced now, happily so. And I 6 months into my doomed marriage, I became pregnant with my daughter. And
Mm.
I quit bike racing, and I thought that I would be so bitter about it. Um, and that itself was this profound journey once my daughter was born of like, because I'd pretty much never not been a competitive athlete.
Mm.
Um, I had chances I did all the sports. I, played field hockey and lacrosse. I skied. I was a synchronized swimmer.
Wow.
To try different things. Again, thank you, mom. In spite of those areas of friction, um, thank you, mom. But I went through this journey of years of just reminding myself to stay active, bike commuting to and from the lab, with like when my
Wow.
daughter was a baby, with my breast pump packed in my backpack and my lunch and my like all
Women
that.
do it all, right?
We do it all. And then years later, after moving to Phoenix, it was 2019, I was staying active. And my goodness, I was in my 30s. And I was bored. I was so
Mm.
bored. And I felt like, and we have such ageism also, and such messaging of like, once you hit your 30s, this is how you're going to die.
Oh,
That's an exaggeration.
yeah.
You can't possibly get better. Just try to hold on to your muscles, but it's going to get worse and it's going to get harder. And you're going to, shrivel up and get ready for death. And I was like, is this how I'm going to die? Um, and I started CrossFit because I was bored and because some exes, and I'm just not going to pick out specifically which ones, had always spoken so negatively about women who do CrossFit. Oh, they end up looking bulky. They end up
Ah,
looking like men. And I hear that sometimes now, and I think it's hilarious.
no.
Somebody being like, "Oh, you look like a man." I'm like, I am so sorry that you feel so insecure. I am
No, really.
light shines so brightly that it's making you see your shadow. But that's not me. That's not my problem. Um, but I wanted something interesting. I wanted to try, and I was so tired of listening to people, but especially some men, not all men, obviously, but some men comment on women's bodies, whether they're too big, too little, too this, too that, like whatever.
Mhm.
I thought I would last about a month, just maybe then try something else.
Yeah.
I just loved it. As a college runner, like I'm not built like a distance runner, even when I was lighter as a college runner. So I weigh about 155 to 160 pounds now. And I like to say this because I'm 5'9", because people who are not involved in weightlifting, they'll be like, you don't look like you weigh that much. Because we still have such pervasive language around how much women should weigh. Um,
Hmm.
that's like a scary amount. And I'm like, you know what? Like, something a coach said to me once is we have got to normalize female athletes weighing in the same weight range as men of a similar stature.
Hmm.
If I think of it that way, 155 to 160-pound male athlete, that's actually really slender. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, cool. It helps me. It helps me because I don't always have a great body image.
Mhm.
Sometimes look in the mirror and I say mean things to myself.
Mm.
I try to, short circuit that. I try to just say to myself, I see
It's
you.
tough as women and like what we've been fed by the media for years and what we've heard from society. But I think that's amazing that you're able to look at like what a men would weigh at the same size, and muscle weighs so much more than anything else.
It does. And I should be so proud of my body's ability to put on muscle. So I started CrossFit and I found out I'm not going to die this way. It's not going to be this. I've ended up being able to do things I never thought I could. And I just think that that is so fun to figure out how wildly capable you are. I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface yet. And
Wow.
I can do these wild things now that I couldn't even think of doing as a college athlete. I'm chasing down a 200-pound bench press, for example.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
Yesterday, I've had some lingering back injury stuff, and so I've been working on it. Yesterday, I deadlifted 300 pounds, and I did it safely and smoothly in a way where I was confident I could do more. And I was
Hmm.
choosing not to make sure that I keep showing up the next day, that I don't re-injure and end up
Hmm.
in that area. Um, and in my CrossFit friend community, I'm known for my lung capacity. Thank you, synchronized swimming as a child.
Oh wow.
So sometimes I do these wild tests that I come up with, like literally tape my mouth shut, put on my 14-pound weight vest, and run a mile as fast as I can. And the last time I did this was maybe about 6 weeks ago. I ran it in 6 minutes, 22 seconds. And like, I was like, man, maybe I could break 6 minutes.
Wow.
Really bizarre conditions of only breathing through your nose and having extra weight on your frame. Another thing that I've really loved about CrossFit is it has shown that people with muscle mass and body mass can still have these incredible engines and move fast over these athletic events where we historically try to put pressure on athletes to weigh less and less and less. Less.
Hmm.
Power to weight ratio is something cyclists talk about all the time. And the thing that you can control more easily seems to be that weight side of it. Runners, it's like, it's not a secret, so unfortunate, but it's not a secret that there's so much pressure on distance runners, especially, but all people on, track and field teams, I think, to weigh less, um, and to think that speed will come with it. There are some interesting case studies that are coming out now that took some female college runners and had them train less, fewer miles per week, eat more. This one athlete, her body fat percentage went from something like 9%, which is so low for a woman, to 14%. And she ran faster. She started
Wow.
with less training, more food. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's what we want to hear.
And I remind myself so many times, and I know better than like anyone from my graduate research that overeating is better than undereating.
Hmm.
Um, if you chronically overeat, you will die more slowly than if you chronically undereat.
Wow. I feel like that's not what we hear at all. We always hear like calorie restriction and um
VOSA has the highest fatality rate of any mental disorder, including
mm,
suicide or depression with suicidal tendencies.
mm,
Um, Additionally, we talk about how eating lower calories can extend lifespan, but we forget this important, this critical statement without undernutrition. Eating
mhm.
lower calories without undernutrition can extend your lifespan.
Huh.
Things that we have done have primarily been on male laboratory animals. So when we assess that in females, it doesn't always hold up. The results are a lot more mixed.
Huh.
Additionally, these aren't CrossFit athletes. These aren't long distance runners. These are lab rats and lab
Mhm.
mice. It's very valuable information. And additionally, so like in rats, I think they do this in mice also. To assess levels of depression, you can do this forced swim test. And this is like a historical laboratory model of depression. You put a rat in a bucket of water and you time how long it takes for the rat to give up. And the sooner that they, and then you scoop it out, you save its life. Um, but the sooner that they give up, the more depressed they are.
Huh.
So you feed these rats less calories without undernutrition, they might live longer, but man, they give up on swimming a lot sooner too. Um,
Mhm.
and it's also important. So if an assessment is on a single sex and on a genetically similar background, we're going to be more limited in how we can apply that to the diversity of, say, female athletes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so many of our like medical tests are in males, and so we don't know the actual issues or how it relates to females. I mean, at my company Jubilance, we are specifically a company for women by women, and so had our clinical trials, of course, with women with PMS. And Megan, I also wanted to touch on like you tried Jubilance. How did you find it and what do you think?
Oh, your social media marketing.
Oh,
And
great. That's what I do.
and so I started looking at it, and like I'm really good at understanding clinical trials.
Mhm.
Um, that's part of my bread and butter and the work that I do now. And so, I looked into it, and there was a promotion for trying it for $20. And during graduate school, I'd sometimes be like, is this pre-dissertation dysphoria or pre-menstrual syndrome? Like,
Yeah.
what do we do now? I joke that, like, well, so I think I'm someone who's really, I have my own hypotheses about how I exist in the world. And this includes part of how I put on muscle more easily than most people I know,
Hmm.
including I think I'm just very sensitive to my own hormones.
Uh,
I've historically in the past had a really hard time taking hormonal birth control. It makes me feel so sick. Um, Consuming soy makes me feel so sick. I
oh,
had my pregnancy with hyperemesis gravidarum, which is, severe excessive vomiting and nausea, which is most likely due to a hypersensitivity to hormones. But then also, put on muscle more easily than most people. And anytime I've had blood work done, my testosterone has not been too high. I think like the testosterone that I do produce, my body's like,
yeah.
I have big moods around my cycle. Around say day 14ish, I experience what I call big female praying mantis energy, which is like, you want to mate, but you also want to rip off some heads and like, um, and then, I go to the big sad. Um, somewhere around day 21 of my cycle. And I find myself doing stuff like putting on Lord Huron's song "The Night We Met" on repeat and like crying. And you're like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting this song on repeat? Like, what is happening? So I tried jubilance, and I very quickly experienced better PMS, less PMS, including things like in the week before my period, I'm more likely to say mean things to myself in the mirror. Issues with body image are more likely to skyrocket. And even that lessened. It didn't go away completely, but the length of time that it was occurring and the intensity of it, both of those improved. But, I am me. I am a thinker, and I might be overthinking this, and it might be a placebo. So I asked my 11-year-old daughter what her impression was of me across my menstrual cycles on this supplement. And she was like, Mom, you're better. You're happier.
Wow, she could see the difference.
She could see the difference. And I was like, all right, I like this feedback. I very literally, before Jubilance, I had this experience in the CrossFit gym. I was trying to I was working on some skills involved in getting a bar muscle up. And I was just sucking at the skills because sometimes you have to be humble enough to suck at things until you get better.
Mm-hmm.
But it was during the big sad. And I was alone-ish in the gym. I just started crying. And I went over to this incline bench and just like looked out the open bay door in the sun, and like a tear was running down my cheek. And I just remember thinking, you're never going to be good enough. Why do you even do this? Why are you even trying? And it's so dramatic. And it's so mean to yourself. And I think that's the thing about it, is that during like really bad PMS, I get so mean to myself. And since I've started taking Jubilance, I've been so much nicer to myself.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Talked to myself the way I would talk to my daughter when she feels like she's failing at something. When she's feeling bad, where it's like, I'm so proud of you for trying. I know I'm upset that it didn't go well. I know I'm upset that I'm struggling. I'm so proud of you for trying and for showing up.
Oh, that's so great to hear. I'm so glad that you're able to talk to yourself like you can talk to your daughter. I know I try and do that with, I don't have a daughter yet, but like, how would my friend talk to me if I were in this position? Or how would I talk to my friend about this similar thing?
I would never tell my friend, you suck for trying and failing.
Yeah.
How dare you struggle with something? How dare something really complicated and hard not come easily and naturally to you?
And your friends just like lift you up always. And that's what we should be doing for ourselves. And I'm so glad Jubilance has kind of made that made that such a shockingly different experience with your PMS, because PMS is the worst.
It is so bad. You're like, these moods, these big moods. I'm sensitive to them.
Yeah. Also, I'd never heard praying mantis energy, and that is so right. And I love it. That is the best descriptor I've ever heard.
Thank you. I came up with it myself, and I'm happy to share it. And you can make it yours, because
amazing.
When I share it, like people who experience it, they're like, yeah.
Yes. Meaning biting someone's head off. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Megan, I think just the final question I want to leave you with is, what is your definition of womanhood?
I am so excited you asked this question. This was one, so, I knew it was coming, and it was actually so hard for me to think of my answer. I've been thinking hard on this and asking my friends and hearing answers where I'm like, nope, that's not it. You know who I talked to about this? It was actually my daughter. It was like, girl, what do we think of this question? She's just the most magical, delightful human. She's like, well, Mom, life is going to be challenging at times. Sometimes it'll be easy, but the journey is also going to be really challenging. And I think womanhood involves really embracing the love that underlies courage,
Huh.
getting after that part of it every single time, going back to that love that has to underlie courage. And I was like, yes, are you okay if I make your definition of womanhood my definition of womanhood? Because I love you so much and thank you.
Wow. She is so wise. Oh my gosh. Love underlying courage.
Biggest gift to everything for me. I am
Wow.
that girl.
Like mother, like daughter.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you for this opportunity to just talk and
Yes.
just be myself.
Megan, it was so amazing to get to talk to you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, likewise. And honestly, reach out for anything, any questions, genetics, strength, anything.